Whoops, and I did that last week too. Let me do this one instead. Hey everybody, welcome to another recording session for the Polite Society podcast. I'm Paul Lathrop. As the title right there says, I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, Charlie Cook of Writing Shotgun with Charlie, Charlie's Gungrams, and a whole bunch of other things. Rob Morse of the Slowfax blog, of Self-Defense Gun Stories, and everywhere you read Second Amendment articles, you read his stuff. And John Richardson of the Only Guns and Money blog. Most of the rest of the crew is down in Arizona at Gunsight, and we're all jealous. So, Robin and Amanda are there, and for those of you who catch me on the Bullet every day, Tom Walls, my training guy every other Friday, is down there this week as well. So, yeah, I'm really wishing I could be in Arizona. That training sounds like a whole lot of fun and a whole lot of learning. Gosh, I wish I could be there, but life happens. So, let me get social media hooked up here. And I want to remind everybody, if you're watching us on the Polite Society podcast feeds, you can comment on the live video, and we'll get your comments right away. We'll get them on the air, and we can discuss them. If you're catching us on OpsLens or anywhere else that picks us up and redistributes us, and there's several places that do. We're on Getter, we're on Twitch, we're on a lot of places. Go to Twitter and tweet with the hashtag PSP. We'll get those as well, and we'll if they're appropriate, we'll put your comments on the air. Real quick before we start recording, fast story. I started using hashtag years ago when I was doing Gun Rights Policy Conference, and I just pulled. Everybody who's been to Gun Rights Policy Conference knows that the short term for Gun Rights Policy Conference is GRPC. So I just put the hashtag together, GRPC. First year I did that without checking to see if anybody else was using it. It was the Grassroots Pole Dancing Championships.
Nice work.
That made some interesting reading while I was at GRPC on Twitter. Anyway, if you want to get a comment in, those are the ways you do it, through either commenting on the live video on the Polite Society podcast feed or going to Twitter and commenting with the hashtag PSP. And I'll filter those out because I know there are a lot of gamers that use PSP. So, we're already getting some comments coming in from YouTube, and I'll get to those here in just a second. Guys, I'm going to go over to show notes here. I think we're ready to start recording.
Yeah, might as well.
All right. In that case, we're going to go with our good friends at Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns. They're coming up in 5, 4, 3.
Hi, this is Matt from Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, and you're listening to another fantastic show on the Self-Defense Radio Network. Visit selfdefenseradio.net to check out all the other great shows.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, October the 24th, 2022. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse, and on tonight's show, we'll talk about award-winning Second Amendment journalist Stephen Gutowski joining CNN. It's not April 1st.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about Chicago being the new Wild West.
I'm Charlie Cook, and we'll talk about a DGU from Gainesville, Georgia. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 637 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. right, it's Monday night. It's 6 o'clock in the Central Time Zone. That means it's time for another Polite Society podcast. As I usually do, I'm going to start with Rob and say, Rob, what's been up with you since the last time we were on the air with Polite Society, man?
It's Monday. I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load radio show. I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories with our colleague Ben Branham. And since Amanda Suffolkle and Bob Campbell were on their way out to get more firearms training, Amy Dillon and I snuck in and got their show on Sunday. We didn't hurt it too bad. I mean, the little scratches, they'll have those cleaned up in a few weeks.
That'll buff out in
John,
no time.
how about you? Say what?
That'll buff out in no time.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go. Well, the most important thing I did this past week was vote. Early voting in North Carolina started this past Thursday, and we went to vote. And I think we were towards the younger end of the spectrum of those I saw online. I voted pro-rights up and down the ticket, including for our state Supreme Court, where one of the candidates for Supreme Court justice actually had argued a Second Amendment case before the Supreme Court, a pro-Second Amendment case. And, I heard a stat at GRPC that said 30% of gun owners didn't vote. Just imagine if they did vote.
Right.
Charlie?
I have had a pretty slow week. I like when Rob says he carried every day, and I too carried every day. And I also had a Utah class not in Utah this past weekend. So it's been pretty quiet here in the Northeast. How about you, Paul? What's been happening with the daily bullets, the weekend bullets?
And it's unusual for me. This past Saturday, I came down with really bad migraines. I thought I had those kicked. It had been a very long time since I came back down with migraines. I got them very frequently after my stroke. But I thought they'd gone away permanently, but this past Saturday I came down with some pretty bad migraines, so there was no weekend edition of the bullet. Came back strong today with Tom Knighton. We had a bullet today, and going to be going strong going forward. I'm no gun stuff for me really to talk about. Early voting is open here in South Dakota as well. I'm toying around with the idea, since I work from home now, I'm toying around with the idea of waiting until voting day and actually going down and visiting my local polls. Part of that is because I want to go in depth in some local ballot initiatives and really dig into what each one is all about. And I haven't had a chance to do that yet. I've been so involved in Second Amendment stuff that I haven't had a chance to dig into a few of the ballot initiatives, and I want to know what I'm voting on before I vote. So and that gives me another 2 weeks to figure things out. So maybe it's just me being lazy. I don't know. But let me get a couple comments in here, because Robert's got a good one. I can get this one in. Wait, that didn't. Let me repopulate. Why isn't that picking up? Now I know why. Give me a second here.
Sure.
And now we send it, and bang! Wait, I thought New Jersey was going to be the new Wild West. What with all those new free people carrying firearms? And he followed up with, again, following Rob's example, I carried every day, and I'm in New Jersey. I thought I'd never be able to say that. Thank you, St. Thomas.
That's great. New Jersey, it's the Wild West of the East, right?
It didn't make it to show notes today, but while I was doing research for the bullet, Letitia James made the news today, and I think it's on the New York Post. There's going to be chaos if the federal judges takedown of the New York Concealed Carry Improvement Act is upheld, it's going to be chaos in New York because all these people are going to have these concealed carry permits. And it's just going to... Wow.
Paul, do you mean the little people will be able to have guns like my security detail?
Yes.
Oh, how important.
How droll.
That's the way we droll.
Let them eat cake, right? All right, let me see here. Doggone, I got to... Yes, I typed slowly. I had to fix something that screwed up earlier, but it's fixed now. Let's see here. That's kind of what's going on with individual news. I want to talk to everybody real quick before we go to our first break about the Self-Defense Radio Network. As you can see, all your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. We're up there on the top row right next to us. Self-Defense Gun Stories. Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns is up there. Gun Freedom Radio. All kinds of great pro-freedom podcasts. They're mostly about gun rights, but not all of them are about gun rights. There's some prepping in there. There's a few other. There's a hunting show in there, and there's more to come. We've got more shows that we're working on getting added to the network too. You can check that out at sdrn.us. You can listen right off the website, and there's also subscription information there if you want to subscribe to any of the podcasts. So let's go ahead and let's go off to our first break, and then we'll get to news, including one I want to tease here because we didn't get it teased in the very first show open, and that is we've got a new team member at the Second Amendment Foundation, and I'm super duper pumped up about this one. We'll get to that right after we hear from ACLDN. Right back, right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tueller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
And we're back. I want to get one comment in here real fast. That's from our writer Dana, who writes up our DGUs. He says, I always vote on election day. It's a long 1-minute walk to the precinct. Well, you are fortunate, Dana. You live that close. I feel sorry for some of these poor people who live in the graveyards in Chicago. Some of those are quite the distance from their voting precincts. I mean, it's quite a haul to get there. You know, you got to feel sorry for those folks. To get off to the news, and this is, of course, the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. First news, we have a press release from the home offices in Bellevue, Washington that got here a few hours ago. Since then, I've been trading texts back and forth with this person, but I'm going to go ahead and start reading from this press release. The Second Amendment Foundation, a pioneer and leader in defense of the right to keep and bear arms, today announced that attorney and experienced Second Amendment litigator Adam Kraut has been named its executive director. Kraut brings almost a decade of experience in the Second Amendment realm as a litigator and educator. Throughout his career, Kraut has represented individuals, companies, and institutional plaintiffs in state and federal litigation and regulatory matters. In addition to his legal background, Kraut draws management experience from his time in the nonprofit world, where he was responsible for overseeing programmatic functions of a liberty-based nonprofit which concentrated on Second Amendment issues. He also managed a FFL. Kraut comes with a variety of media experience, having written for publications such as Recoil, Recoil Web, and other online publications, writing and hosting a YouTube series, hosting and appearing as a guest on multiple podcasts, and appearing on television. I'm going to go ahead and skip down, and I want to get Adam's comment here at the bottom. He says, I'm eager to continue SAF's legacy of innovation and excellence in the legal, educational, and public arenas, Kraut said. For the better part of half a century, Alan has built SAF into an organization which took a unique vision and made it a reality. I look forward to working closely with him to shepherd the organization forward. We will continue to create the foundation for the next series of cases we hope to take to the Supreme Court to ensure the right to keep and bear arms is restored to its original meaning. At the same time, we will work to guarantee the SAF's longevity by bringing the next generation of gun owners into the fold. Guys, I talked with Tom Knighton about this here a little bit ago on the bullet. What really excites me about this, Adam Kraut, I don't know how old he is, but I know he's not as old as I am. He brings youth to SAF. He brings energy to SAF, and he brings success. Not that the SAF is lacking success, the exact opposite, but he adds success to an already successful SAF. Anybody want to chime in about this?
I think it's a great... Rob, go ahead.
I've been amazed how SAF juggled so many balls. I've never seen them drop any, but it's great to see them bolster their team. Because if there were ever a time when people desperately need to be sued, this is it. John?
You're absolutely correct. I've known Adam for a good number of years, and I think he's an excellent choice. I'm glad he actually turned down the opportunity to be on the NRA board a few years ago when he went with another organization. And I had dinner with Adam at GRPC, and stand-up guy. Excellent choice, brings lots of experience both in the courtroom and just in gun rights in general, and gun things. Yeah. So... And age-wise, he's 40-ish, maybe.
It's still young, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Compared to everybody else at SAF, I was the youngin'.
Right. I think this is great. You know, I got to meet Adam this past year, and he's a really great guy. He's fun to be around. Unbelievably knowledgeable. He's level-headed and cool, and he's going to be an incredible addition to the SAF board.
Well, and my understanding is, and he'll be coming on the air in the very near future. I'm aiming now. Do not hold me to this because Adam hasn't committed. I'm aiming to get him on the air in the next few weeks. But I want to get him here as soon as we can. I think it's a bigger position than just being on the board. I think it's an actual day-to-day position working at SAF, whether that means working at the home offices or like me working from home. I don't know, but again, this is a huge thing for SAF, and how do I put this? I've never been one to mince words. When for long-time listeners to the podcast, long-time viewers of our videos, know that before I came on board as an employee of the Second Amendment Foundation, and I don't want to say this because it's going to be stuck in my head and I'll have to spend the next month trying to unsay it because I said it for so many years. Welcome to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We had a very long and very good relationship with Firearms Policy Coalition. That's where Adam comes from. And I'm not giving away trade secrets here, by the way. And he's a lot of the reason Firearms Policy Coalition has had the success they've had recently. And to bring that under the fold here with SAF, again, just one good move after another. And I feel like this has become a commercial for SAF. So let's go ahead, John. Let's talk about news out of Chicago.
Well, as we all know, Chicago has become America's new Wild West. Just this past weekend, we had 41 people shot and wounded. Sad news that another 11 were shot and killed. So the total of people shot in Chicago year to date has now exceeded 3,000. And that's mostly done by drug gangs who, let's get real, they run Lori Lightfoot's Chicago. And criminals do what they want with impunity. They don't give a second thought to being caught by police or meeting resistance from their victims. Another instance was this past week. 3 thugs crashed their carjacked car on the Dan Ryan Expressway. Instead of waiting, like normal people for a police report, they abandoned the car and started running. Now this is an elevated highway, so it's kind of hard to walk away from the crash. Whatever else they may have left in the car, they made sure to have their AR-style rifle with them, along with their masks. They ran down Chicago's busiest expressway, has hundreds of thousands of commuters daily. What did they do next? They found somebody who wasn't paying too much attention and carjacked that car. You just have to say, you feel bad for the Chicago police because they have more going on than they can deal with. In the real world, Chicago PD doesn't have enough officers to respond to over half of the highest priority 911 calls. Instead, those calls, you're going to wait between 30 minutes and 2 hours for an officer to become available to take a report. They're report takers. You are your own first responder.
Amen. Amen.
Rob, you and I talked about that on a bullet last week. One of the myriad of bullets we did together last week. I think Rob and I did 3 back-to-back bullets last week because I had one commentator after another that bailed on me. So I don't want to say bailed, that had a scheduling conflict and couldn't make it. So Rob and I ended up doing 3 bullets back to back, and that was one of the stories we talked about. And I remember talking at the time that you got to get it doesn't matter if you're in public, get your face out of your phone. It doesn't matter where. If you're walking down the sidewalk, get your face out of your phone. If you're behind your car, you're at a stoplight, get your face out of your phone. Pay attention to what's going on around you.
It really seems like Chicago was portrayed in one of the Batman movies, and it really looks like it was supposed to be Gotham City, and it really has turned into some sort of a movie where people are carjacking people on a highway after they're involved in a gang shooting, and they're just looking for victims and taking their cars and going about the business of being a criminal and a gang member. And it's a little out of control. It's out of control.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Lori Lightfoot isn't going to try to put into the budget a bat signal.
I was arguing with Bill Frady today. whether that was a feature or a fault. If your society fails, those who can leave will, typically middle class. Those people tend to be more conservative. So are politicians failing, they're deliberately pushing their cities to failure so that they get rid of their political opponents. I think it fits what the evidence we see.
Yeah. I want to get two comments in here real quick. Dana says, Chicago PD is like many big city departments where officers are exiting faster than the recruits can be trained and hit the beat. That's especially true in New York City, but it is also true, like Dana points out, in Chicago. And Robert says, when seconds count, Chicago police will be there in a few hours. And Dana wins the internet. She's going to install a bat signal. An old bat signal? Sorry. Oh, wow. Okay. Charlie, let's talk about Stephen Gutowski.
All right. An award-winning Second Amendment journalist, Stephen Gutowski, is joining CNN as a subject matter expert. Stephen has been giving his insights to outside reporters for years, and I expect for free to help them understand the Second Amendment politics and law. Quoting Gutowski, he didn't stutter here. Quoting Gutowski, I'm going to be a subject matter expert, not a commentator. So don't expect to see me in many heated debates or going up against your favorite or least favorite opinion personality. Do expect me to do my best to fairly and accurately describe gun policy and politics debates. Please hold on to that expectation. End quote. As expected, Shannon Watts and many of CNN's liberal viewers were outraged that the network would hire someone who actually cares about facts and reports the news. Stephen will continue to report at his media outlet, The Reload. At least CNN admitted it did not have reporters who knew about Armed America. Good for them. Now I hope they actually learn the facts.
Well, as that great line from the movie Blazing Saddles, harumph, harumph. Shannon went bonkers over this. I mean, absolutely blank bonkers. Included in her Twitter rant was that Stephen won an SAF award as Journalist of the Year, and that just kind of totally fried her. She didn't say anything about the person from the Trace or the other person. And, it's not widely known, but the president of both the Trace, which is Bloomberg funded, and Everytown, which is Bloomberg funded, is the one and the same person, John Feinblatt.
Mm-hmm.
This is great. Stephen is he's a great guy. He's very knowledgeable as well, but he's not. This doesn't sound right. He's not as hard around the edges as many people on the right are. Do you know what I mean? And when I say he's soft, I don't mean he's soft, but he's not. He's on our side, but he's not as hard. And I don't even want to say as hardcore as we are.
He's not as confrontational, maybe?
Yes, that is a great word and a great way to put it.
He sticks to the facts and doesn't offer conjecture on meaning. You and I, and thank you, Paul, for giving us a forum, we get to speculate. Oh, it looks like Chicago is broken. That's actually not news. That's opinion. And Stephen does a great job of sticking to the facts, and then you have to form your own opinion.
Yeah.
That's
He's a
what
journalist.
news is supposed to be.
Well, they could try it at CNN.
Here's the other stuff too. He always dresses good and he looks good on TV. And this is obviously something that's going to bode well with the cameras.
Yeah.
I don't actually know how much he's going to be on camera, as he's going to be presenting the facts to so-called journalists who don't know anything about this subject.
You get a fast comment in here. Michael on the YouTube side, speaking about the Chicago stories. I was born and raised in Chicago, and it gets worse and worse as I get older and I keep moving farther away. Eventually, Michael, you're going to run out of country, so, dig in somewhere.
I just hope he runs out of Illinois first.
Yeah, Texas is a
Yeah,
fairly
Texas is
free
close.
state.
Well, I take that. I disagree. I would like him to stay in Illinois, but in southern Illinois, because you actually do have pro-gun Democrats in southern Illinois.
Okay.
And you can't change the state as a whole if you just leave.
Right.
Right. Just leaving isn't necessarily a great answer for everybody, and not necessarily practical. But it would be nice if somebody did something in Illinois. I grew up an hour south of Chicago, and I've got a lot of family that still live an hour south of Chicago. And I can't tell you how many times they've told me that the criminals leave Chicago and they come down to the area where I grew up, and they still wreak havoc down there, but they kind of hide out from the police, and then they go back up to Chicago and cause more crimes, and then escape out to the middle of nowhere, out to the cornfields, and then head back to Chicago to commit crimes.
Michael says he stopped in Iowa. Iowa's fairly free, and we haven't talked about this. This is not in show notes for tonight, but it keeps showing up in my news search when I'm researching for the bullet. So I'm just going to bring it up here. Iowa, coming up in a couple weeks, has a Second Amendment to the Iowa Constitution on their ballot. The reason they put it up, it takes 3 years to get an amendment to the public vote in Iowa. It has to pass the legislature in 2 consecutive years, and then the public gets to vote on it the 3rd year. The reason they want it is in case something happens, like we get an administration that doesn't believe in the Second Amendment, and the federal government decides they're going to do whatever they want to. They want an amendment in the Iowa Constitution that says the right to keep and bear arms does exist in Iowa, and any limitations on it shall be judged under strict scrutiny. And I certainly hope that passes. There's a lot of press against it in Iowa. At least that's what I see on my news searches every day. But it seems like there's some strong support for it too. And this is Iowa. This is not Chicago. It's not New Jersey. It's not Philadelphia. So,
is it New York?
No, it's not New York either. You want to talk about New York, Rob?
The laws about firearms are changing every day. Thursday of last week, 2 Western New York congregation leaders joined with the Firearms Policy Coalition and the Second Amendment Foundation to file a lawsuit against New York State. The plaintiffs are interesting. One's a pastor and the second is a bishop. They're challenging New York's gun control regulations that banned them from carrying guns on church property. Well, they banned everyone except for hired security guards. For these pastors and their families, they might be disarmed at home as well, since they could live in a parsonage next to the church and on church property. Second Amendment Foundation Vice President Alan Gottlieb said, and I quote, "Reverend Hardaway has almost always carried a firearm for self-defense on Sundays and at services on the premises of the churches that he's pastored. New York has now stripped Reverend Hardaway, Bishop Boyd, and other New Yorkers of their ability to defend themselves should the need arise at their place of worship. The restrictive new statute prevented both men from doing so." Close quote. There were reports of several synagogues where the security team continued to carry, even though it had become illegal. One quote said, "It would be better to go to jail than to let his community be hurt in an attack." Now, U.S. District Judge John A. Sinatra Jr. ruled that the pastors were likely to win their case, so the judge issued a temporary restraining order against the state of New York. That TRO means that New York cannot enforce the provisions of the law that disarm honest gun owners on church property. The TRO will remain in place until both sides of the case present arguments to the judge. Now, at that point, the judge has some options. He can send the case to trial and both sides can argue their case. He could issue a permanent injunction that says the plaintiff's arguments are so strong that they're likely to win the case and the law can't be enforced. Or the judge might rule that he was wrong, remove his TRO, and the law can again arrest pastors who carry on church property. It's not a roll of the dice. We have a hint how the judge will rule. To quote Judge Sinatra, and he writes like a judge, so work with me here. Ample Supreme Court precedent addressing the individual's right to keep and bear arms, from Heller and McDonald to its June 2022 in Bruin, dictates that New York's new place of worship restriction is unconstitutional. Close quote. I like that decision. Quoting the Firearms Policy Coalition, and this one's good. The court recognized what we have long argued, that no one should be forced to forego one constitutional right in order to exercise another. I'm not absolutely positive, check with your lawyers, but I think this is considered a civil rights case.
It is.
So New York will owe the Firearms Policy Coalition and the SAF attorneys for fees and costs. John?
Well, a temporary restraining order is usually not issued unless allowing the law to go into effect would cause irreparable harm.
Yes.
And anytime a civil right is impaired, that is usually considered irreparable harm. So it's good news.
It's not only that, it's unless it's going to cause irreparable harm and there's a strong likelihood of the plaintiff winning their case.
Absolutely.
So it's
I like the way you phrase. I like the way you phrase that. Creating a new gun-free zone is causing irreparable harm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I got to get this comment in here fast. I don't know if you had a comment, Charlie, but I got to get this comment from Robert in here fast. Bishop takes Queen Hochul. Checkmate.
I was going to say, if we could get a rabbi in this case, we might have a joke. A bishop, a pastor, and a rabbi all walk into the courthouse.
There you go.
Fingers crossed.
There's Alan Gottlieb behind them going, what took you guys so long? But that was interesting that those security teams who were protecting synagogues, they were all over. Some were in New York City, some were in Orange County, some were all across New York State. But their attitude was, we've been targets of attacks before. I believe, I'm a working middle-class guy who wants to have a felony record. But he goes, that's horrible, but it's better than seeing my other parishioners, my colleagues, my friends, my synagogue attacked and people killed. Wow.
Yeah. Go ahead, Charlie.
I was going to say, this is exactly what we need on our side for people to stand up and to stand up and say no. No, I am not doing this. A long time ago, I had this crazy idea that I would run for office, and I told people my campaign slogan was going to be, I'm putting my foot down and my finger up. I'm not going to take it anymore.
That's a good one.
You.
Well, I was going to say about New York and Hochul, it looks like Lee Zeldin, who's the Republican challenger, might just actually win. And you talk about crime. His house got hit by bullets just the other day.
Yes.
In a nice Long Island neighborhood.
Not only that, right after it happened, Shannon Watts went after him because his daughters witnessed this, and it didn't change his opinion on gun control. Oh. And, all right, I need to get, if I could, I want to go back because we got some great comments that came in after we moved topics, but I want to go back to the staying and fighting. We've got some comments I want to get to about that real quick. And we're going to go, we don't have a guest tonight. The one we had to reschedule, so we can go long on news. It's not a big deal. So I want to get this comment. This is from Dan Waz, although it doesn't show, it shows a different person's picture, but this came from Dan Waz, who, by the way, will be joining me Wednesday on the Bullet. He says, stay and fight. We are stacking wins in New York. And then over from the YouTube side, we got Gun Website saying, Otis McDonald stayed in Chicago, took them to the Supreme Court and won. Rhonda Zell stayed in Chicago, took the city to the Supreme Court twice and won both times.
Amen.
Well, actually, it was the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, but good enough.
Yeah. You got it. Rob, I remember this very clearly, and that's saying something after my stroke. We were doing shows. I was still doing shows. I was driving truck, and when I came home, I would do shows live from ABN Army Surplus.
Right.
And back when we were still on Google Plus, when there was such a thing as Google Plus. And we had a comment come in from New York, and I cannot remember the name of the commenter. But we were, at that one point, we were saying, at some point you've got to just, when do you leave? When do you decide you want your family to know liberty, and you leave? And we got a comment in from a guy who said, look, I was a Green Beret. I served our country. I'm not used to surrendering. I'm not used to giving up. I don't feel like starting now. I think I'll stay. That stuck with me. And my apologies for not remembering the commenter from back then, but I love the attitude, and it seems like we're getting more and more of that attitude from Occupied New York, Occupied New Jersey, and Occupied Chicago.
Occupied California. Some people in San Diego County can get their carry permits now. I got mine 5 years ago with ease. All I had to do was move. For other personal reasons, I'm no longer considered a bigot if I say certain things that you and I might hold obvious, but they're outside the range of the Second Amendment. So I'll go where I want it. It's okay. You stay and fight. I'll support you. Do we want to talk about who's going to talk about Lori Smith?
I've been covering this story for over a year. I think I'll go ahead and I'll talk about Sheriff Smith. I originally, it's been a year and a half ago, this story first started leaking out. Sheriff Lori Smith is accused of corruption and misconduct in her apartment's handling of concealed carry applications. This week, and she's on trial right now, a civil trial. This week, the trial heard Sheriff Smith's boyfriend, Gary Bechtel, a wealthy San Franciscan who was part of his family's engineering and construction empire for decades. Bechtel was one of the lucky few who received a concealed carry permit in Santa Clara County from Sheriff Smith. As Bechtel testified, so were a number of his family members. A central issue in Sheriff Smith's trial is whether she provided concealed carry weapon permits in exchange for donations and other favors. Bechtel said he donated $750,000 to the Sheriff's Advisory Board and arranged construction crews to make improvements to the Sheriff's Department shooting range. Bechtel said he applied for a CCW because I've had threats against me throughout my career at Bechtel Group. Bechtel said he, his son, and 2 other relatives also received concealed carry permits signed by Sheriff Smith. Gary Bechtel should be able to carry a firearm in self-defense. The problem is that other witnesses had good cause and a justifiable need to conceal carry a firearm, but Smith's office never even bothered to respond to their applications. Other witnesses have also admitted on the stand they never did declare the reason they needed a carry permit, but they were approved anyway. The people like the head of security at Apple, who I believe it was, will donate to the Sheriff's Department something like 281 iPads so our security guards can get concealed carry permits. And sure enough, the permits showed up. Another one that she got box seats at Raptor games. A exclusive box for her and her group. And so, yeah, this may be a civil trial, and she, as of today, she's still the sheriff. She's not been forced out of office. I don't think she's running for re-election, but I think she's still in office until 2024. So I'll have to look that up, but
$750,000 sounds like a lot of money, but when you realize that it's 4 people, it's only $187,000 per license.
187,000 here, 187,000 there. Pretty soon we're talking about real money.
Right.
Feel the burn? Okay, now this is where my heart goes out to the folks in California. You can have this image that, it's corrupt, but there are no gun owners that are affected, and that's absolutely wrong. Yes, it's a immediate perception that there are no gun owners in California and in New York, but that's diametrically opposite to the facts. Those 2 states are the first and second states with the most gun owners. Gun owners are everywhere. It's just we're suppressed in some states, like California and New York.
Absolutely.
Isn't Dianne Feinstein also from the San Francisco area?
Yep.
She's San Francisco itself. This is from the South Bay area.
All right. And didn't she also do something very similar where she said, hey, listen, I'm going to get a concealed carry permit, and then there's going to be no permits after this?
There were, for a very long time, she was one of 3 concealed carry permit holders in San Francisco County.
Unbelievable.
I thought of John. Can we talk about Mecklenburg?
Absolutely.
How much news do we have enough to do one more full segment of news if we take a break here? I think we do.
Oh gosh, yes.
Okay. Let's go ahead and let's step aside to a break, and we'll come back. We'll have another segment of news. But first, we're going to hear from CNJFO. We'll be right back right after this.
New Jersey is a civil rights wasteland where an unconstitutional law known as justifiable need keeps ordinary citizens from exercising their right to bear arms. New Jersey spits in the eye of freedom, ignores the Bill of Rights and the Heller decision. New Jersey politics are an anti-civil rights bulldozer and a spreading cancer. The Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, a tax-exempt nonprofit, has a goal to defeat justifiable need, reverse course on all anti-freedom laws, and render aid to other jurisdictions by filing Supreme Court-bound litigation. CNJFO is a beacon of freedom behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. Join CNJFO's strong, enthusiastic patriots. Support the coalition of New Jersey firearms owners today. Protect all our rights and return freedom to the Garden State. To donate or learn more, go to cnjfo.com.
All right, and we're back. One comment as we come back in. By the way, this is the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. And one comment as we come back in. Spartan 6 says, Damari Nolo, I refuse to be subjugated. I love that. Rob, let's go ahead and talk about, this is a weird one out of North Carolina.
Well, maybe it's weird. Elections have consequences, particularly in Mecklenburg, North Carolina, and sometimes they take years to unfold. George Soros funded an anti-gun sheriff. Now, honest citizens are being denied and then delayed when they apply for their carry permits. The sheriff is now ignoring a court order to process applications. He's submitting all applications to the Veterans Affairs Administration and asking for medical records. Sounds reasonable until you realize he's doing that for everyone. Even if you've never served in the armed forces, weren't married to an armed forces spouse, none of that. The VA acknowledged a backlog of medical records requests. By the way, none of the other 99 counties in North Carolina are reporting similar problems or delays. Just this sheriff in Mecklenburg County. There are almost 8,000 applicants who are now waiting for their permit. We saw school districts put under a consent decree back when racial segregation was ruled unconstitutional. Now, it sounds like it's time for a judge to impose a consent decree on the sheriff's office and take over the processing of concealed carry applications. We've seen sheriffs break the law, where citizens would take the sheriff to court for not processing applications. Then, during the trial, the sheriff would issue a permit to those applicants who were suing him, and the cases suddenly became moot. Maybe we have to have John and Jane Doe plaintiffs, so the sheriff has to be honest in court. John, what do you see?
Well, I can't resist with this next comment. Most in Mecklenburg County, which is where Charlotte is located, are charlatans. We know there's at least one charlatan.
There you go.
Gary McFadden is actually under a consent decree already regarding our pistol purchase permits. Grassroots North Carolina took him to court along with GOA. He's had to sign he was dragging his feet. He was blaming COVID for not issuing pistol purchase permits. Without giving away anything, I think we can reasonably anticipate another lawsuit forcing him to get his act together on carry permits. The law for both permits does have time limits, and he's trying to weasel away, say, well, that only starts when I get the stuff back on mental health. Rob?
Yeah, can you imagine what the sheriff gets to say when a judge looks at him and says, Sheriff, you're the slowest judge by a large factor compared to 99 other counties in North Carolina. Explain to me why you're so special.
Yeah. And Mecklenburg is no longer the largest county. It was for most of my lifetime. Wake County is now larger. Raleigh.
Does that matter, John, really? I mean, it has more people, therefore it has more police departments.
No, what it means is that in Raleigh, which is all from the sheriff's department, what it means is that if the largest county in the state isn't dragging their feet, why is number 2 dragging their feet?
Good point. Gotcha.
This is exactly what New York City did last year when they had the case that went up to the Supreme Court, and they said, "Oh, you know what? We're going to issue permits in New York City," and then it became a moot point. And these anti-gun politicians, if they're not going to pay attention to the laws, then why do we have to pay attention to the laws? This is one of the things that aggravates me.
I
Right.
want to get off topic, but I want to get two comments in here. First one from Robert over on the YouTube side. He says, "Hey, SAF got a check for $27,000 from Amazon Smile. Make sure to make SAF or your other preferred 2A organization your Amazon Smile charity. It helps them, and it has to pay them to pay Amazon, or for Amazon to pay it." Oh, I'm sure it does, because Amazon just in the last few weeks has opened a new fulfillment center in Sioux Falls, and on the front doors of this place are huge, and I mean monstrous, "No guns allowed" signs. And so they are not exactly a 2A friendly company. And yet, yeah, Amazon Smile, everything I get from Amazon, including a lot of broadcast equipment I use for SAF, goes on an Amazon Smile purchase, and part of that the SAF gets back. And so it's good to know that SAF got a fairly big check. And yeah, please, if you use Amazon, use Amazon Smile. It's smile.amazon.com. And when you select a charity, I would greatly appreciate it if you would select the Second Amendment Foundation or another pro 2A organization. Next one. This is a great point. Spartan 6 says, "A veteran's medical records are private, are they not? I thought with the HIPAA law they should have been, but..."
You sign a waiver.
Okay.
Yeah, you sign a waiver. And at least when I renewed my carry permit, they sent it to the local hospital and to the state mental hospital, which is like 50 miles away, and to one other residential facility saying, were there any records?
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Charlie, I believe your name's on the next story.
All right. Some New York politicians are above the law. New York City Hall is typically off limits to gun possession, whether or not you're one of the relatively few New York City residents, luckily or well connected enough to obtain a concealed carry license. According to the New York Daily News, one of Mayor Eric Adams' top officials is routinely carrying his gun while on the job. Chief Technology Officer Matt Fraser refused to comment to the Daily News. Fraser referred questions to the spokesperson, who used some weasel words to answer questions about whether or not his boss was allowing him to carry on the clock. Fraser has a license to carry a gun for over a decade. The spokesman said Fraser, quote, has not openly carried since officially assuming the role of Chief Technology Officer, end quote. Then the spokesman refused to take up any follow-up questions. Another source, who also spoke on the condition of anonymity for fear of retaliation, confirmed seeing Fraser with the weapon clipped to his belt on multiple occasions at work. Quote, "This isn't Texas, it's New York City," end quote. And in New York City, it is a felony offense for concealed carry permit holders to set foot in a gun-free zone like City Hall or other government buildings. Yet unnamed sources say Fraser's doing it on a regular basis, and I bet he isn't worried about the law.
No, I don't think he is. You know, as George Orwell said in Animal Farm, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
Guys, given the prevalence of social media, one cell phone picture is worth $1 million in campaign donations.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know how hard it was to read the story and to say the weapon was clipped to his belt and not the weapon was magazined to his belt?
You're...
Wow.
Like it is so ingrained. Whenever I hear the word clip, it doesn't matter what it's for. I'm like, clip, no, it's magazine. Nope, this time it is a clip.
Well, and you got to wonder. My holsters, my inside the waistband holsters, have clips, but you got to really, really look to know if I'm tucked. You got to really look to know I'm carrying. And usually I have a cover garment even over that, so that even where the clips go over my belt, you don't see those clips covering my belt. So this guy is, if you got to wonder if he's not got a poor quality holster and carrying open outside the waistband.
Well, read what the person originally said. Has not openly carried since officially assuming the role of Chief Technology Officer. Was he open carrying, which is
Before?
probably unheard before?
If he wasn't open carrying and they knew he was carrying, then obviously he's printing, right?
Hmm.
I mean, they can tell he's carrying, and
Or is it I don't care, I'm kind of concealed? Is it a concealed carry rig, but he doesn't tuck, so the butt of the gun sticks out?
Well, we know the whole reason he's carrying is data protection.
Right. If there's anyone that probably doesn't need a gun, it's probably the Chief Technology Officer.
Right.
Well, firearms are the original point-and-click interface. So, all right, John, I think you got our next story, man.
Yeah, and I think I got it because of the name. Kshama Sawant, a socialist Seattle councilwoman, led efforts to defund the police. Now, believe it or not, she is demanding police protection at home. Sawant claims that bags of human feces have been thrown at her house several times. Oh, 6 times, with the most recent incident occurring on October 13th. She wants police outside her home every night. Oof. It's hard to keep the answers clean.
Yes. I got nothing.
This is their there are two levels of people here.
The hypocrisy is strong in this one.
Yeah,
the hypocrisy. Nice. It farts to be with you. And what bothers me is the media isn't tearing into her and calling her a hypocrite on a daily basis. Why is she more important than the citizens of the city she pretends to represent?
All right. And to point something out, our good friend Kevin Sona posted a story about what's his name in Florida, DeSantis, having a rally and making it a gun-free zone. Somebody spoke up about this, and there was a story about how he's hypocritical about this, but we don't get hypocritical stories from the people on the left.
Oh, and they abound. They are out there all right here. Rob, next one.
I want to jump down to the FBI because I'm guessing if it's not our last, it's close.
Yeah, we're getting there, yes.
Good guys save a lot of lives, but the FBI can't see them and won't count them. A stunning new report from Dr. John Lott at the Crime Prevention Research Center says there have been massive errors in FBI reports on attempted mass murderers. The FBI seems to have a strong bias against counting attacks that were stopped by armed citizens. Dr. John Lott went back over the last 7 years of data and identified 360 active shooter incidents. And he admits, look, I found that many. That doesn't mean I found all of them. In that data, he found 124 times where an ordinary armed citizen stopped the attacks. The FBI, over the same period, only found 252 active shooter incidents, and they could only find 11 examples that were stopped by armed citizens. This is really important. John Lott found that some 34% of the active shooter incidents were stopped by armed citizens, not the 4% as cited by the FBI. That's important because we're arguing about FBI reports that are often published in the mainstream media. Now, here's something interesting, and Lott admits it himself. He excluded another 24 cases. He didn't count them because the armed civilians stopped the armed attacks before the murderer even fired his gun. Wow. The media and gun control advocates seem concerned with the worst possible outcomes when civilians defend themselves. Yes, of course, there's a possibility of a bystander getting hurt. We just haven't seen it. Let me say that again. We've yet to see an example where an armed citizen shot an innocent bystander in a mass murder event. In contrast, we know that the police have accidentally shot the armed defender in a mass attack at least one time. Now, before everybody gets wound up, it's really unlikely that the civilian defender and the police are ever going to meet. The police usually arrive long after the shooting is stopped. Usually, the murderer has left the scene by the time the police get there.
Yeah.
What we really want to know is something a little different, and Lott digs to find it. How effective are armed citizens excluding gun-free zones? Where we're allowed to carry, how effective are we? And there, the numbers are amazing. Armed citizens stopped mass murderer 51% of the time in places they were allowed to carry. That explains why mass murderers choose gun-free zones. And it also explains why anti-gun politicians want more gun-free zones and why the FBI won't make honest reports of the data.
That last statistic is just stunning. 51% of the time, it's a failure on the criminal's part when they decide to go do evil in a non-gun free zone.
Where citizens are armed. That's right.
I think that speaks volumes to the value of having an armed citizenry.
Yep.
Well, in the Buffalo shooter, in his manifesto or his rambling whatever, he specifically looked for a gun-free zone. It wasn't perfect because there was an armed guard there, but he knew nobody else, once he shot the guard, would be armed. And he was right.
Yeah. All right.
Do we want to go on to DGUs?
Yeah, let me get
Some comments and then move on.
Two comments. They're not really directly into what we're talking about,
okay.
But got two really cool comments that came in that I want to get up on screen here real quick. Robert on the YouTube side says, "My pistol identifies as an office tool. It's a cordless hole punch."
Right.
To which Spartan 6 replies, "My pistol identifies as an apple core remover. I wouldn't want to try to eat much of that apple after that core remover has done its job, though."
Don't worry, there won't be much, Paul.
Depending on the caliber of the core remover, yeah.
It's more like applesauce.
Especially if you use the slugs, the 12 gauge slug core removers. Yeah, that turns watermelon into watermelon juice.
But who am I to judge?
That's right.
Yeah, let's go ahead and we'll go to our break here, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about a DGU in Gainesville, Georgia, and I don't know how to pronounce Lenore County,
Lenore
County, North Carolina. We're going to step aside for break. We're going to hear from the Complete Combatant. We'll be right back right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
All right, we are back. This is the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. As I do every week, I'm going to go ahead and read our disclaimer. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training. And you need formal training, especially if it's a Utah class you get from Charlie, whether he does it in Utah or somewhere else. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Rob, you and I talked about this one briefly last week on the Bullet. Let's talk about Gainesville, Georgia.
7:30 in the morning, Gainesville police receive a call about a man acting crazy. You can call it abnormal behavior. No, he was crazy. The man ran from the initial scene and ran through a nearby apartment complex. We know he was at least armed with several knives. According to police spokesman, it looked like he kicked over a motorcycle and damaged a couple of vehicles. At the same time, on the other side of the apartment complex from where the man started, a paramedic team was loading a patient into an ambulance as part of a totally unrelated call. The man came across the medics and started threatening them with his knives. Nearby was a local man who witnessed the deranged man threatening the medics, and he took action. He shot the knife-wielding attacker several times. After being shot, he took the gun from the defender, but was unable to operate it. Police believe that the gun was empty. The attacker was taken to the hospital with a minor... The defender, I think, was taken to the hospital with a minor injury. The attacker has been charged with attempted murder, obstruction of an EMT, possession of a firearm and a knife during the commission of a crime, and aggravated assault. What's left out here is that his family said, yeah, he's a paranoid schizophrenic. He's off his meds. Paul, talk to me.
First thing that comes to mind on this one is training. It really helps. And shot placement. It really matters. If you want somebody to stop what they're doing, especially if they may be on meds that stop pain or off meds that correct their thinking, if you need to stop somebody, there are specific areas in the body you've got to hit to make them stop what they're doing and stop it right now. We don't ever shoot to wound. We shoot to stop. And despite being shot several times, this guy did not stop. So, I guess that's kind of where I'm going with that. John, you're in the show notes. What do you got, man?
Well, it's funny. This weekend we were at a wedding. Barb's cousin got married. And after we came out, we're waiting for the reception. I'm looking across the street. It's in a place called Biltmore Village. And I see this guy just sitting at the steps at a Hardee's. I think out west you call it Carl's Jr. And he was just like sitting there, and all of a sudden he'd twitch. and he'd twitch again. Then he'd get up and walk around and twitch. And you didn't know whether or not this guy was on drugs, this guy had Parkinson's, this guy was just abnormal. I was just glad he stayed on the other side of the street. But I mean, you're seeing more and more and more of it because there's just not enough room in mental health facilities for people with mental health disorders, especially, paranoid schizophrenics and whatever. Charlie?
What I want to know is this. What did these people know, and when did they know it? If this guy is running around like a crazy person, and he's threatening people with knives, how do I know he's supposed to be on medication and he's off his medication? What I would see is somebody running around with knives threatening people, and it would. If I ended up on this person, the jury of the person that shot the man, I'd be like, all right, well, he's running around with knives. We didn't know he needed medication and he wasn't on it. That's not our issue. That's not our problem. He's still a threat to people, even though he's not on his medication. What do you want us to do? I don't want to say we should have that option, but we can't take care of those problems. That's not our issue. Our issue is he's running around with knives threatening people.
Yeah. The sad thing is a lot of the families don't know what to do either.
Yeah.
Especially with adult children.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Robert says, search YouTube for why one cop carries 145 rounds.
Right. Yeah.
You know what? Yeah.
We're going to North Carolina now?
Yeah, John, let's do that North Carolina story, and then I want to get to a comment from Spartan 6 after that.
Okay. Before we start, let me make one comment about it. North Carolina is a strange state. Lenoir County is in eastern North Carolina. The town of Lenoir is in western North Carolina. Henderson County is in western North Carolina, but the town of Henderson is in eastern North Carolina. Go figure. Lenoir County deputies were called to a home outside Kinston at about 3 p.m. for a trespassing call. The trespassers started fighting with the deputies and was getting the best of them, according to Sheriff Ronnie Ingram. During the fight, both officers' body cameras got knocked off, which came as a surprise to the department. According to the sheriff, they had been messing with the cameras, and the magnet which holds him on is quite strong, and they didn't think they could have gotten knocked off. Whatever. A passerby witnessed what was happening and shot the man, believing the deputies were in danger. The shot stopped the attack, and the man was taken to the hospital. The man had had past encounters with law enforcement, but this one was different. This time things escalated. The deputies only have bumps and bruises, but will be fine. The man, however, the trespasser, is facing charges for assaulting deputies, and there is no word on any charges for the shooter. I'm going to say there will be not likely any charges for the shooter.
I hope not.
Yeah. Rob?
One of the things that's really hard, and you can do it, I suggest you take a class to learn how, because the on-the-job training is really ugly. When two people are hand-to-hand, how do you get a gun in there and hit the right one? It's really easy to do, but it's not really a matter of marksmanship. It's just a matter of training to learn the tricks. Charlie, what do you think?
I think if the body cameras are supposed to be on your body and they fall off, they're not really effective.
Yeah, you think?
We spent this time and money and the taxpayers' money, and everyone's got one of these, and they fall off. Is this what they wanted to get these, but this is what they ended up getting from Wish? This is ridiculous.
Or the officers messed with the cameras so that they would fall off because they don't like having their behavior monitored. You know,
Well,
I would imagine
I'm going
a
to be
sergeant-
charitable here. If the magnet was digging in the wrong place and was uncomfortable to wear for a full shift, maybe, trying to move it to a different part, different part of the uniform or something. I don't know.
But I can imagine being a sergeant, or better yet, a lieutenant, and I walk down and I say, inspection, I'm going to pull on the cameras. And if they come off easy, you're getting written up. Citizens have the right that their police officers act responsibly.
All right, let me get a couple, because we got one specific. We got a couple specifically related to these. So, from the YouTube side, Big John 410 says, always ask the police if they need assistance in order to receive qualified immunity. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV, and I did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. I stayed in my bedroom, which is right over there. So it's not legal advice from me. And I don't.
But
and
it's interesting. We have to ask some of our legal experts. Thank you, Big John.
From the Facebook side, Carrie Alclair says mental illness has increased since COVID and the stress of the economy, lack of facilities and staff. That I would not doubt in the least.
Thank you, Carrie Ann.
Good point.
And then I want to go back to a news-ish topic. This one came in as we were leaving the news segment, and I want to get to this, and we'll probably use up what time we had. Well, we were already over on this, but we're going to use up some time anyway. Spartan 6, hey, Paul, I would like to bring up Tennessee's constitutional carry law. They passed one without removing an old statute that says you can't carry with the intent to go armed. Please help us. I don't know that again, not an attorney. That's unusual.
Later laws typically supersede earlier laws. The fact that Tennessee issues concealed carry permits would indicate that older statute has been superseded.
Is the term to go armed or to carry with intent to cause a problem or to cause violence?
That's what they used to say in North Carolina, to go in terror of the public.
There you go.
Yeah, I need to do some more research into that, and I'm going to make a note to myself. And although Alex Uli is my every other Friday guest on the Bullet, and he's not a Tennessee attorney, he's a Indiana attorney, but that'd be a great question for him. And I'll also run it up the chain up here at SAF and see if I get any response back. That's a great question. And he also sent a follow-up. He said the term is go armed, so.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, it sounds like, honestly, the easiest fix to that would be to talk to your legislatures and have a law repealed. It sounds like the easiest way to go about it, but
I know the Tennessee has a group, the Tennessee Firearm Association.
TFA.
Yeah. Okay. That might be something to check out on their Facebook page or their website, or send to them and ask them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's do this. We're going to go ahead and step aside to our final break, and then we'll come back. We'll let you know what we're all doing in media, and we'll shut the show down. We'll get to that right after we hear from JPFO. We'll do that right now, right back after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
Hey, welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. See, I told you I didn't want to say that earlier because I almost said it again. Presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. This, again, for our final segment, we usually just go around the horn and say what we've all been doing with media. And I'm going to start with you, as I always do, Rob. What's up and new over at the Slowfax blog, or anything else you want to plug, bud?
Thank you for having me on the Daily Bullet. Putting together all those news stories, that last one about Dr. Lott and collecting his statistics, I turned that into an article at Slowfax. The article is called Good Guys Save Lives, but the FBI Can't See Them. My articles are at slowfax.wordpress.com. John, tell us what's new at your blog, No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money.
Well, as I noted in the personal news, I voted this past week. Fortunately, I had clear choices when it comes to gun rights. Congressman Ted Budd, running for the Senate, owns a gun store and range, while his opponent, Jerry Beasley, is Everytown endorsed. That told me everything. For Congress, Republican Chuck Edwards not only holds an FFL, but sponsored pro-gun bills in the state Senate. His opponent has not mentioned anything about guns, but we pretty much know where she stands. So if you haven't already voted, make sure to check out your candidates to make sure that they really are pro-gun and pro-rights. And I would also suggest looking at your state groups for that info, because they often have some of the best info on what's going to impact you locally or statewide. In other news, we talked about this earlier, I find it hilarious that Shannon Watts and the rest of the gun ban industry have their nose out of joint with the selection of Stephen Gutowski to be an analyst for CNN on gun issues. Of the three commentators, he's the only one that is pro-rights, so it's 2-1. Obviously, they wanted 3-0. Go figure. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com. Charlie, what have you been doing?
All right. Well, tomorrow, episode 157 of Riding Shotgun with Charlie is coming out. Lisa Ludwig from She Trains You on Long Island is my passenger. She is a lot of fun to be with. She's quick and witty and wise. She's really fun. So I filmed a really good show with her. You can watch the show on YouTube, on Gunstreamer, and on the Ops Lens, or you can download the podcast version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. And I'm hoping to get an extra bonus episode put out next week as well. So keep an eye out for that. Paul, tell us what is happening at the SAF airwaves.
Well, I'm going to buckle down this week. I'm going to get more of GRPC released. I've had so much going on in my personal life that and some medical things that have keep coming up that I've had problems getting Gun Rights Policy Conference videos released, but I'm going to get back to that. I've also got a full slate of the Bullet scheduled for this week, and this weekend is going to be another weekend edition of the Bullet. I was invited but had to turn down an invitation tonight to go to a governor's dinner here in Sioux Falls, actually about a mile that away. Governor Noem had a invitation for Susan and I to come to a dinner. She's running for re-election this year. I certainly hope she gets it. She's ahead, and if you believe the polls, she's ahead and leading and running away with it. But she's running like she's behind, like all good politicians should. But I've missed so much time. I could not afford to miss any more time with Polite Society and the Bullet. So I really would have felt very guilty if I'd have went to go do that. But I do encourage everybody, keep coming, 5 p.m. Central Time, tomorrow, I believe, is a Rob Morse kind of day for the Bullet, as well as most of last week. But
and this weekend?
Yeah, and this weekend. Tomorrow's a Rob Morse day on the Bullet, and Saturday I haven't not booked who else is going to be with Rob Morse, but he'll be with me on the weekend edition. So do please come back and keep joining me for the daily news. Now the Polite Society is all the week's news. The daily news, what you get, what's going on Tuesday, we'll talk about on the Bullet on Tuesday. And same with Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. I want to remind everybody to listen to the Facebook or join the Facebook listeners group if you're a Facebook member and you're so inclined. Search Facebook for Polite Society Podcast listeners. And that does wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society Podcast. For Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
Okay, we're clear of recording. Before I shut down the broadcast, I got one more comment from Spartan 6. He says, so far the answer seems to be get a permit, referring to that Tennessee issue. I don't like it, but it seems that people are content with it. It sucks. Well, it only takes a few people to get the burr under their saddles, Spartan 6. You seem to be one of them.
I don't think he understands the law. If you want, you can find something to complain about. I don't think this is real.
Well, I don't know if it is or not. I'm not an attorney. I will be reaching up the chain. I will find somebody in Tennessee who does have authority, and I'm going to find out probably tomorrow. So Spartan 6, if you're still tuned in, check me out on the Bullet tomorrow. I'll probably have your answer then. If I don't bring it out immediately, comment, and I'll make sure to let you know what I found out.
So some of the states that have permitless carry or constitutional carry, they have an enhanced permit that allows you to carry in more places. And Tennessee, I believe, is one of those.
Mm-hmm. South Dakota does that. South Dakota has a regular permit if you want to carry in 30 states. In South Dakota, you don't need a permit, period. If you want to carry in 30 states, they have the regular permit. If you want to carry in, I want to say it's 40, you get the enhanced permit. And also the enhanced permit allows you to cache and carry a handgun at or any firearm at a South Dakota FFL. So,
gotcha.
Alrighty, I think we're going to go ahead and shut the streams down. Thank you everybody for watching, and again, please do come join me 5 p.m.